was awarded for Leading for Impact Women in Leadership Award from Fed Health IT. And that's just the last 4 years. I don't know how many years we would go back to where she wasn't getting something every year. I'm playing with my microphone apparently.
That's okay. I can't see you though, Tiffany.
You can't see me?
I can't see you. I can hear you. And I see a lovely picture of you, but that's okay.
Because I guess I accidentally hit the stop video.
There we are.
Okay, awesome.
You're back. Yay. Okay.
For government work. Oh, wait, I can't use that anymore. So she has accomplished a whole heck of a lot, but we are not here today to talk about the wonderful career that she has had. But we are here because it's September. We're closing out September, which is the Suicide Awareness Month. And I would call her a subject matter expert by unfortunate circumstances on how suicide can impact people when they've lost somebody to suicide. And she knows this because she lost her father, who was a Navy veteran during World War II. And then her brother, a year later, was it about a year later?
No, he was 13 years after my father.
Oh, 13 years. Okay. After losing her father, 13 years later, she lost her brother, who was also a veteran. Army?
He was a reservist.
Yeah, Army reservist. Okay. So, and then when she was in her 20s, she married the wrong branch and an officer at that. She had to marry an Air Force guy because she wanted to cover her bases for all the branches and stuff. So, yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Because I think a lot of times we don't realize, like, when you lose somebody, and it could be, and I think even with veterans or service members who lose somebody that's to suicide or losing somebody on the battlefield, there's a grieving process with all that because you've just lost somebody. So, and I'm not comparing combat loss to, like, one is more important than the other, but or worse or whatever. So the first question I have, since how old were you when your father passed away?
4.
4.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you were a little. So, how did you find out that he died?
My mom told me that he had passed away. She was a Rosie the Riveter type and a government school teacher. She believed in shooting straight. So I come by it naturally from her. But she told me that he died. It was the next morning, and and she didn't really tell me how. I learned that, I think, as I got a little bit older. But she explained that it was because he was sick and he was struggling and he just couldn't continue. But it wasn't because it wasn't because of me. She wanted to make that very clear. Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother passed away when I was about 7 years old, and I couldn't comprehend what death meant. I didn't understand it, and because I remember my dad picking me up so I could lean over the coffin and kiss her forehead. And when we walked away, I remember saying, "So where are they going to take her in that box?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's going away. Okay, when is she coming back? Well, she's going to heaven. Okay, and then she's going to come back. I just didn't understand because I couldn't comprehend it. So I wonder, did you have like a similar experience?
My mother didn't take me to the funeral. I grew up in Appalachia and or Appalachia, depending on how you want to say it. And we're a very independent people. We're very persevering people, but change and things you don't understand are hard. And so in 1969, suicide was not something people understood. And so a lot of people were interested to come, they want to support you, but they also want to see how you were doing. And so she didn't want to subject me to that. And so I didn't go to the funeral, but one of the things we visited the cemetery, and she would explain, we put flowers there, and there's other people in the cemetery, buried there, so you kind of start to understand that happens. And she would say, look, he's not going to be here. He's always going to be a part of you and with you, but he's not going to be physically here like he was. And for me, one of the things he used to do, she used to tell me he spoiled me rotten, because I was the baby. There were only two of us as children, but I was the little girl. And so he would come home either at lunchtime or earlier in the day, and like before she got home from school, or right as as she was doing that, and he would take me for an ice cream sundae, which usually ruined my dinner.
Of course.
But and sometimes we would go to his shop, because he was a carpenter, and he would be working on some things, and I just kind of mess around, and he was always very clear about understanding the importance of tools and which tools you use for things, and having the right skills. But yeah, I was definitely the apple of his eye. So explaining that he wasn't going to be around, that was that she was very clear about, he's not going to be here, and we have to go on without him, but he will always be a part of us.
I love the ice cream thing though. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I still have dessert. If you give me a choice, I'm always going to have dessert first.
Heck yeah. So instead of saving your fork for the dessert, you're going to eat the dessert and save the fork for the meal. It's the way to do it. Now, so you said 13 years later was when your brother.
Yeah, my brother was at boot camp, Army boot camp, when my father died, and he was a couple weeks away from graduation. And so again, it was 1969. He was the only surviving male in the family, so they transitioned him to reserve status. And his oldest son was born 3 months after my father died. My brother was 16 years older than I was.
I was getting ready to ask what that age difference was.
Yeah, there was 16 years between us. Part of that was part of my, is part of my father's illness a little bit, but also just decisions parents make. And so Terry was at boot camp, and so he came home, and they went back, graduated, and then he did reserve for a while. I remember him drilling and going places. I think and I should know this because I worked at VA, but it gets convoluted. I think he was actually maybe in the Guard in Ohio. I think he was Ohio Guard. But he go do stuff with tanks, all those big trucks. And so he started having some issues when I was probably a junior in high school. He started struggling a little bit, and he got help. He tried to get help, but he didn't share with his doctor the family history. And the doctor wouldn't talk to anybody in the family. My mom tried to talk to the doctor, so he knew the family history, wouldn't talk to her. And so my father was adult onset schizophrenia, and his was worsened by his service in the military. It was basically onset during his time in the military. It was worsened. And so he got to the point where he couldn't manage it anymore. My brother was, the diagnosis was manic depressive. I'm not sure that's the right diagnosis, but that was the diagnosis. But he struggled. And there were things going on in the economy at that time in Appalachia. The steel mills were pulling out. A lot of the chemical companies were restructuring. He worked for a chemical company, and he was afraid that he was going to get sent to another state with his family to work, and he just wasn't sure he could handle that. And that was, for him, that was a big deal, and that was the instigator, as well as the just not being able to handle some things. He was 34. Um, he left a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old behind. And he died 2 weeks before I went to college. And I didn't want to go to college. And my mother said, if you don't go now, you won't go. So she made me. She literally drove me to college and kicked me out the door and said, you stay here until I come get you for Thanksgiving.
Go and do good things, learn good stuff.
Mhm.
So when your brother passed away, you were about 17, about?
17. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to do the math. It worked. I'm surprised. So at that point, when your brother had died, did you know how your father had died by that point?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah. They both died by self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Okay.
Mhm.
I didn't know, because I think you said that your mom was trying to, piecemeal it to you, but based on your age.
Oh yeah, by the time I was 6 or 7, I knew, because you
Okay.
can't live in the community I lived in, and because everybody talked about it. So if
Mhm.
she didn't tell me, I would have heard it, and she told me.
Yeah. So once you process that, or understood what suicide was and what death was, and that not coming back, how did you process that? Like, knowing that they were hurting so bad that was their only out.
Yeah, that for my father, that took longer. Well, I would say for both of them, I was well into my adult time before I completely came to terms with it. I lost other people because I was so much younger. My mother and father were my mother particularly was the youngest in her family, and and my father was, I think, towards the end in his family. And then I was born when they were in their late 30s.
Mhm.
So aunts and uncles were much older, and grandparents. And so I lost grandparents and a couple of uncles, while I was growing up. So unfortunately, um death, I don't want to say you never get used to it, but it comes, and you have to understand, it's a part of life, and understanding that it happens. But understanding what their journey was and where they were and what got them to that point really took me until probably I was in my 30s or my 40s. Now, in college, I did study psychology, so I learned a little bit there, and I understood a little bit more, but I really didn't fully comprehend it, I think, until I had been at the VA for a while, and I started kind of seeing, I was doing appeals as an attorney, and I started seeing some claims, and seeing the stories of struggle, and kind of putting things together. And then I was able to get my father's military records. Of course, I was around for my brother, so I kind of know what he went through. But I was able to get my father's military records, and it was very clear that he was struggling even when he was serving. And then when he came home from talking with relatives and my mom, and kind of what he went through, he was able to mask it for a while. He was in a period where they gave electric shock treatments,
Mhm.
and that actually helped him.
Mhm.
And then they moved away from him and put him on meds, and the meds did not work. And my brother also took meds, and they didn't work for them. So, but I think understanding what my brother went through, and kind of watching that, and then kind of as I became an adult, and was faced with other challenges in my life, um, picking up and becoming a military spouse, and living overseas, and away from home, and having your children, and it's, you have challenges. And so understanding how you deal with those, and how things can make you think differently, I understood more. And and then because I understood, and I started reading and studying it a lot, probably in my 30s more so when I've started having kids. I really understood that, I was at risk, and because I had lost both of them. And that was something I came to just as studying psychology in college, but also from things I read, and that kind of ensured that in the family we after my brother's death, we talk about everything. We shared concerns and issues and struggles. And so so that was something we did, but I didn't realize how much that made a difference until I realized how much I was at risk. And, when we were in Germany and I didn't have a job and I was pregnant and had a baby and my husband was deployed, it was not a fun time. And, I had to work through that because you know what you're up against.
And because that was going to be the next question, knowing that you were more at risk for attempting suicide, and then having a situation that could drive somebody to it by basically being a single parent, even though you're married.
Right.
During that rough time, is that something, did you find yourself getting to the point to where, like, maybe I need to go this way and get out of
I
it?
didn't. I didn't. And the reason I think I didn't is because when I started having depression symptoms, which I had, I reached out. I reached out to family and friends. I had conversations. My mother put herself on a plane, came to Germany, and and so she kind of supported me through that. And other people, I had the military community there that I talked to, and it was faith-based, so that was helpful. But I struggled later too. I mean, after my mother's death, in 2018, when we went into COVID, my mother had lived with us for 17 years, and all of a sudden I'm in the house by myself. My husband was working because his job required him to be in, and I'm at home being the chairman virtually, and she wasn't there. And that was hard because, it was different while you were working and doing things and you knew, but when she wasn't there, I started again. So I reached out and got counseling then.
Wow, that's awesome. So there's two things that I think is key. You recognized where you were and the potential. So you asked for help and you got some help from your mom and you got some counseling. And I know, I think it's getting better. Like mental health issues is getting better than it used to be, but it still is like has that stigma of, if you have mental health issues and you go get counseling, people look at it as a sign of weakness when it's not.
Right.
If your leg's broken, you're going to go to the doctor and get a cast. But so why not do the same thing for your brain?
You should, although some of our military friends don't do that.
I don't know anything about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
So, it was interesting because when I was, when we were stationed at Offutt Air Force Base, I was an intern at the JAG office, and I worked for the JAG, which is the Judge Advocate General. I worked for the colonel who was the JAG, and that man, he's still amazing. His name is Hank Fowler, and he was a 7-year POW in Vietnam.
Oh no.
And his, you would think he would have a completely different personality, but he was laughing and joking and always pleasant and, very zen. He still is. And he's a wonderful person. But I remember, I was in law school, I was working with him, and we had some issues with stuff going on base. And he was always very particular about how we handled those service members' situations, because he didn't want it to, if there was a way we could figure out around it to fix it, to adjust to, sometimes you couldn't, but he really thought about that. And that was interesting to see. When I was in college, I had really thought that in addition to law school, I also thought about going and getting um, my master's and PhD in psychology because I was very interested in it. And when Brett and I got married, or when we decided to get married, I did some research and I realized the military wouldn't let me anywhere near them as a professional counselor because at the time they didn't want you to be treating people in the community that you might know, which makes sense, right? It's not a lot different for the lawyers, but it's different. So so I think so I went the other way, but and decided on law school, but I still ended up at VA, which half of the business is mental health cases, and I got pretty good as a judge. I could pretty much see what we were dealing with at a hearing or in a case pretty quickly. But for my family, because of our experiences and because of the impact on us, we talk about it. So we've had another member of the family who struggled with some things, and he went, he went and got help. He just checked in, said, "I'm not leaving until we fix this because I won't make it if I don't." So it's and that's what you have to do. But being able to talk about it, understand the impact, and both of my sons, they never met their grandfather, never met their uncle, but they know their family history and they know they're at risk, and we talk about it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So I will just say, without getting into it, because this is about you and not me. I was just thinking about the date. In 2 days, it'll be 2 years ago that I was released from inpatient care. And I was there for 3 weeks and I had self-admitted because while I had a thought process of, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to go through with it. But I didn't, but I also knew that my world was upside down and I needed help. So I, drove myself to the VA, and said, yep, I need some help. And kind of similar to that family member of yours, I was there for 3 weeks because I'm not coming here just to spend the night or do a 72-hour watch. I want to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, you want to figure out how you manage and adapt because it's there. And so you have to, and that's what you have to do. I mean, I think that's why it's so important to talk about it, that people understand that many of us have dealt with it on many levels, whether you had a plan or whether you were depressed and you knew you were going down a slippery slope. That you reach out and you get help and you say, I need help. And that's what you do. And I think that's the important part to it, because, unfortunately in the community I lived in Virginia for a while, we had several teen suicides in the local high school that my children went to. And it was very, very, very hard. But one of the things that both of my kids said was, I really wish they understood the impact to not only the families, but to the community, because it does impact. I mean, suicide, I think the numbers are a little different now, but the last numbers I saw, 1 in 6 people are impacted by suicide. I'd say it might be a little higher these days, but that's a big number. And it's not just family members that are at risk. I mean, you think about how military organizations work. They are families, and so in many of the units. And so when you have one, it's really important to support that unit and help them through it.
It is. I don't know why we have such a difficult time asking for help, but it's just that stigma. But speaking of asking questions, and this is the flip side, so many times people think that if I say to you, Miss Mason, are you contemplating suicide? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? people think, well, I can't ask that because it's going to make you think about suicide as an option. And then you're going to go do it. And it's going to be my fault because I asked you that question. Why do you think we're afraid to ask that question?
Because it's scary. I mean, because we think that's what, oh my gosh, I can't ask them because they might, I might put the thought in their head. Well, first of all, the thought's already in the head. Okay, so that's the thing you have to understand, and that's a myth, right? So one of the things I ran into that as a judge, for the VA, I would always ask. It's like, it's actually part of the rating criteria, but it's also important to ask, because when you ask, you're telling that person that you care about them and you want to know how they're doing. And so one of the things, when I became chairman, actually when I became a senior leader, and then as I moved into chairman, I worked with the judges, encouraging them and because they weren't comfortable either. Many of them weren't comfortable asking that for that same reason. They believed that they would put the thought in the head. And I said, look, the thought's there, right? So it's a question of, are you acknowledging that the thought's there? Because the stigma still exists. It's the stigma about, I don't want to make them think about it. I don't want to put the thought, but if you are acknowledging that the thought is there and you want to help, then you can try, you let them know, one, that and that you care and that you want to help. And I will tell you, I can probably count on my hand, I would say it's 3 or 4 times where I was in a hearing and I asked the veteran the question about, are you contemplating suicide? And he said no. And I said, have you thought about it? No. But at the end of the hearing, and these were, I think all but one were in-person hearings, I said, I had a little problem with the recording equipment. I need to step out of the room and check on something. And I went and got a counselor and I said, he's not leaving until you talk to him because he's suicidal. Right. And then I would usually they had a representative with them, and I would pull a representative aside and say, he said no, but that's not true. Mm-hmm. And so, and those are the things you have to do. I mean, unfortunately, I had one suicide as a supervisor at the board before I became chairman, and then I had one in the last 18 months as chairman. And they were, I knew both of them. One person, I actually was called by the Fairfax County Police to identify the body, which was very hard. And it was just, and that person was a veteran. The second person wasn't a veteran, but I knew that person. And, as chairman, I stepped in and I was very visible for my team, and I supported my team and helped them through it and called in the crisis line from VA. And, I called everybody, I talked to everybody, I talked to the family. It was very important to me that they knew I was engaged and visible and here for them. Because when we had it previously, leadership hadn't done that. And, there were like 2 or 3 of us that were kind of handling it by ourselves. And it was, for somebody who has experienced it personally, experience it professionally is not any easier.
Yeah. Do you feel like your experiences with suicide has made it easier for you to read people, like the one gentleman or veteran who said no, but you're like, do you think that's helped you be able to read people like that?
That has helped because, I lived with it. But also I think studying it, and learning about it, and, also helps, one of the things, people don't often recognize about me, because they make assumptions on titles and things like that, is I'm pretty intuitive, and I'm also an introvert. So I watch and I pay attention. Mm-hmm. And so it's a sensing thing, that it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And so, those are things that, I pay particular attention to. And quite frankly, I mean, that's part of the reason for the book is, what I learned as a suicide loss survivor as well as other challenges I face, I took, instead of hiding in a corner, which was what I would have preferred to do as a four-year-old child, my mother would not allow me to hide. She said, no, you're going to go live your life. And but I had no choice but to learn and pay attention and watch. And so I did, right? And I took those lessons learned and brought them forward, and they helped shape the type of leader I became, which is a little different than most leaders, especially of my generation. I was not a results-focused leader. I was a person-focused leader, because if you take care of your people and you invest in your people, that's,
they're going to want to do the job.
Well, and your organization is going to be better for it. But yeah, the job will get done because they know how to do the job. That's not a question. So.
So that makes me think now, Miss Introvert and watching person. I shared something with you before we started recording, and you just had that straight face, like, yeah, okay, maybe that's what it was. Maybe you were like, okay, I'm not surprised. All right, moving on next.
Yeah, it's what I did learn. My husband laughs at me all the time. He's the Canadian in the family, so he says I give him the best material. He's probably right. But I was not a fan of public speaking in college. Didn't like it at all. And when I became chairman, and actually before I became chairman, you have to testify before Congress and go through all that. I learned how to present. And so I can be an extrovert. I can present and be an extrovert, but I get my energy from my downtime. But just because I'm presenting as an extrovert doesn't mean that the brain's not back here paying attention to things.
Yes, I think on that, everybody pegs me as an extrovert, and I'm like, I'm actually like an ambivert. Like I live on that line, because yes, I love interacting with people and I enjoy it. But at the end of it, I'm like, yeah, I gotta go. Because I want to recharge. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand introvert and extrovert. They think, oh, well, you're outgoing, so you must be an extrovert. And it's not about whether or not you're outgoing or not. It's about where do you get energized.
Yeah.
And if you're an extrovert, you're like that bunny. You're still going.
You're still going. Well, I'm one of those that I hit the wall, I fall over. Battery's out.
So well, some of the questions that I was going to ask, you've already kind of answered, but I will. Huh?
I do that sometimes.
Yeah. See if I ever give you questions in advance again.
Even if I don't know them.
Yeah. So with the being, you called yourself a survivor of suicide loss. So with that experience and getting counseling and asking for help, for somebody who might be listening or watching this, what would you tell them if I'm struggling because I lost somebody to suicide? What would you tell me? What would you think? What do you think I need to know in that place?
I think first is, honor their memory and celebrate their memory. Say their name. My father was Al, my brother was Terry. And talk about them. Think about, how they impacted you and what good things were. Like I told you, my father taught me about the importance of tools. Well, that just happens to be in my book because leaders need a toolkit. My brother was an athlete. He was a very amazing athlete, basketball player, and he always encouraged me to play sports. I was not good at sports. But he said, no, you are. You just need to do more. Well, then when I started playing golf, all of a sudden I got decent at sports because I found the right sport, right? And so, so when I play, I think of him. He and my father both played. They didn't play a lot. They weren't. It wasn't something they did, but they played. So I think honor those memories and celebrate them. But if you're struggling around it, reach out and talk to somebody, even if it's just a friend, or you can go to counseling. You can reach out for assistance, because it is important to talk about it. I have a friend who lost her son, and she struggles as anyone would, and she talks about it, and I think that's what you need to do. And she shares she goes on her life, but she lives her life also honoring things that he would have liked. So I think that's important to do.
And so I have some of those questions I do want to ask you that does that very thing. But before we do that, you said twice already about having a book. I said in my book. So I would love for people to know a little bit more about this Dare to Relate, leading with a fierce heart.
Yes.
So what is up? What's
So
up with that?
so when I retired, I decided to, pivot and remake myself again in true military spouse fashion. It's just what we do. And I think veterans do it too. We're better at it than people realize. So I decided, everybody said I should write a book, and so I did. So it's really about overcoming those challenges, realizing that you have challenges, that we all have challenges, and facing them, and how you face them, but how you learn from them, right? And how you bring those into, in my situation, leadership, and how it taught me about the importance and impact of relationships, but also why that's important as a leader. And so I talk about in the middle of the book kind of things you can do to develop your leadership skills, or find out more. We all have imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome. When I was writing a book, little gremlins sitting on my shoulder. You don't know what you're doing writing a book. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm doing it anyway.
I have a triple dose of that.
So, we all have it. So understanding how you manage it and how you work through it, other things you can work through. And then towards the end of the book, I talk about the tools and the skills you need as a leader. And those skills, quite frankly, are caring for and relating to and investing in your employees as people. If your employees are people, and they are the most important resource you have. They're the most valuable resource. And so you can't lead over them. You can't, you have to lead with them, and you have to work with them. And so I tell some stories from my experience as well as others. And so that's what the book's about. It's in pre-sale right now. I'm sure you'll have it on your webpage about how to get it. So
Heck yeah. I sure will. And I love how you said it on your on your website, which anybody can plug into.
That's
and
right.
get.
Anybody can.
But I loved how you put coming soon to a shelf near you.
That's right.
Yeah,
it'll be out for publication in late February, but it is on pre-sale now.
On my birthday, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That'd be a great birthday present.
Yeah, so it's got perks in pre-sale, like a signed copy, getting your name listed in the book as a supporter, getting a sneak peek at a chapter, voting on the cover, all sorts of fun stuff. And I also do speaking from the book. I just did my first TEDx, taped it last week, so that'll be fun when it comes out.
So, gosh, I was going to ask about the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so just in case somebody is confused, because I know somebody right here. When I was looking at your website, I think for the first time with the pre-sale, pre-release manuscripts of the book, I don't remember now, so I might be making this up, but I think there's like different tiers of support.
Yes, there are different tiers.
And so based upon what you pay, you'll get that leveled tier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody who buys in pre-sale gets their name in the book. But if you're doing like a higher donation or a package, so if you buy a package over $250, that's silver, 500 is gold, and then anything above 1,000 is platinum. And so you get your name, website, and the link to your, in the book, as well as on my website in my author page.
So when you buy your copy of this book, look for the Medal of Honor being listed in this book.
It will be in there, I think. I think it'll be in there, right?
We'll find out. That sounded like we just made a transaction, I think.
I don't know. No, I don't. It goes through the pre-sale. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's also dinner. You can also have dinner with my husband and I in DC or in Pinehurst, or you can play golf with us. So
so look, when I joined the military, I remember at my first duty station, my boss said, okay, everybody in the military drinks, smokes, has tattoos, and plays golf. What are you starting off at? Like,
golf.
Well, for me, I said, well, I'm not 21 yet, so I can't fully answer that question. But yeah, I smoke. And now that I've gotten out of the military, after 24 years, I've done them all, but I've not played golf. And I'm like, what the heck?
Well, so you can't be in the Air Force. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, that's right, Air Force.
Yeah, they play a little golf. They play a little golf. Yeah. Yeah, there are some who don't, but yeah. I will mention that, my youngest is a golf instructor. He's a professional golf instructor. So, apparently it paid off.
Well, on that note, so moving right along. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So you mentioned earlier that part of the healing process is, honoring the memory of those people that you've lost and saying their names and other things. So some of the questions that I wanted to ask you kind of fall into that. So I would say with both your father and your brother, are there any significant things about them and your relationship with them that sticks out? Besides the whole ice cream before dinner and things. I mean, to me that counts, but
Well, the other memory I have with my father is he was a big country music fan. My mother called it wang wang music, twang twang music sometimes. But he loved to watch Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton. And so I remember sitting with him on the couch watching Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton. And so whenever I see Dolly Parton, I think of that and I too am a country music fan. Different, but yeah.
Not the twangy kind.
Yeah, just a little bit different. I do enjoy some of the older style music. I do have a rule that I like the banjos and the fiddles. I like to hear them. So that's my father. With my brother, he was a big, like I said, he was an athlete. He was a sports guy. But the other thing is, I have this major fear of roller coasters. I do not like them. I do not ride them. I never have. My husband, my children, both all ride them. No, I will ride them, only if I have to, and usually it doesn't work. No, he really would push me on that. He would challenge me and push me, to kind of face those things that I was uncomfortable with, whether it was in sports or whether it was, riding roller coasters. Because, he's like, you have to face your fears. And that was interesting, from him, given his suicide later. But, that's a different situation when you have a mental health situation. Understanding your fears and facing them are two different things.
Yes, that reminds me of another veteran who wrote a book after she retired. The infamous Kim Casey Campbell.
I just talked to her yesterday.
Oh, did you? Yeah, Flying in the Face of Fear.
Yeah.
I just finished her book. It's amazing. I love it. Yeah, when you said facing your fears, I was like, wait, that sounds like a book. Oh, it is kind of, sort
It
of.
is a book. Mhm.
Mhm. So are there any are there any particular conversations, like I like how you shared the earlier about the hot dogs. Wait, did you say hot dog? Was it hot dog? No, that was me making it up, because that's one
Mhm.
of the things that I did with my dad was
Okay.
go to, there's a local place called Ye Old Fashioned Ice Cream, and
Ah, yes.
they
Mhm.
sold like hot dogs, hamburgers, salads, and
Mhm.
ice cream. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah. So do you have any conversations or like just best memories before we cut out of here?
Um, I think, other than the ice cream, we always did with my brother and his family, we always did Thanksgiving, Christmas together. And so my mom would make one. She usually did Thanksgiving and they did Christmas. So things like that, just, over the food and talking and football in the backyard type stuff. But I think the other thing I do remember, not necessarily food, because the ice cream is the big one,
It's the best
but
one.
you used to have, and I think we still have them, is they'll have the fairs in the parking lots, set up in the parking lots. And I remember we had one across from our house, and it was the Tilt-A-Whirl. My father took me on the Tilt-A-Whirl. Now the Tilt-A-Whirl I will ride to this day. Roller coasters, no, I haven't. The
Huh.
Tilt-A-Whirl I went by. So I don't know, but yeah, so those memories are important things to hang on to, because it kind of helps you, one, again, celebrate them, but also honor them. My brother was a big sports guy, so he coached his kids in sports. He attempted to coach me in sports. His kids are more talented than I was. So, and, but also, there's always sports on. I mean, when I met my husband, he was a football player in college and he's a kicker. And so I learned how to straight on kick, because he's a straight on kicker. And so I know how to kick. And I raised, a couple of kids who played sports. My youngest played football, and he can still hurt me when he throws his football at me, but I can catch it. So
See, well,
yeah,
that's awesome. And so I started off reading all of your accolades, or no, not all of them, some of them. So now we're
yeah.
on 2018. And 2018, whew, no, I'm kidding. Well, I appreciate you sharing all of this. And I will tell the audience, I will put in some of these notes, her website and the book. Is there going to be an Audible version of this, or you don't know yet?
Yes. So yeah, once we get through pre-sale, it's part of what pre-sale is, so I can publish fully, both, paperback, hardback, audio. And so I think I'm close enough that I can probably say, yes, we're gonna have an audio book.
Okay,
We're close enough.
awesome.
Yeah, so that would be great. And it's always great to talk to you. I really appreciate you having me back on the show since I
Ah,
retired. So thank you.
I think I love our conversations more than you, because I think you're pretty awesome, and there's no award for that, but you have enough of
Uh,
them to go around. I'm
well,
kidding.
I don't need awards. I just like meeting people and engaging and encouraging people. And it's about
Yeah,
purpose, impact, value every time. So
absolutely. And when I saw your sheet pay, media kit page, I was like, oh my gosh, like I think we're on a similar path or desire or something. I don't know.
yeah,
But anyway, I
yeah.
really appreciate you. I do, forever and ever.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
thank you, Tiffany. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll chat with you soon. But I look forward to whoever your next guest is. I can't wait. So
ooh. And like we just crammed this into because she won all of those awards and recognitions and distinctions because she was really busy working. She's retired and she's still busy. She has somewhere to go now. So
yeah, I do. So I
awesome.
gotta run, but great to talk with
Yeah,
you.
you
Thanks
too.
everybody. And connect with me on LinkedIn. Tiffany's there with me. So just join everybody. I'm out there. So any
Okay.
questions? If you have any questions, let me know. Okay.
All right. And I
Take
will put
care.
that in there too.
Okay. Take care, Tiffany. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Mouse.